Hi, dudes. What's up? You guys missed some local slanderous conversation. Eyes only, law enforcement only.
Well, it happens.
It does.
What are you going to do?
Hey, man, we're going to get to one of my favorite topics today. That's all the airplanes in the Guadalupe Mountains.
My favorite
crashed airplanes.
Now my favorite topic is women.
Yeah, we agreed not to get controversial.
Oh, okay. Well, I won't bring that up again then.
Is this still a family show?
Not really, no.
Okay.
No. So, you might notice our listeners, we're going to be a little bit louder than normal. Had a couple of emails that said the output volume was not quite there, and it was not, so we're going to be a little bit hotter.
Well, give that system a couple of steroids then.
We're kicking it in the butt a little bit. We're going to see what happens. It's blasting my headphones right now. So a weird moment in time. We're actually so Joe Rogan was talking about the New Zealand shooter, and he glossed over the circle game deal, right? And he says, he gave the white power sign. And so immediately the comments blew up, and they're like, that's not it. And the top comment was from Donut Operator, who's, the cop podcaster. And I commented under the Van Cave, and Donut Operator made it a highlighted post. So I have the screen cap of a Joe Rogan video commented on by Donut Operator, commented on by the Van Cave. So, yeah, that's as famous as we'll ever get. It lasted 15 seconds, and we're off.
You're operating in some pretty big circles these days. I mean,
it's a big time.
You're like a regular celebrity.
Yeah, so I figure I'll go the route of, Bill Burr, and I'll have my own helicopter here pretty soon.
All right.
Yeah, so I promised one of the things I was never going to do is have a laptop, and we're talking about airplane crashes in the Guadalupe Mountains, and I started going over notes. Bill has a pile of maps, and I realized I'm not going to remember all of this, so I might as well just pull up my crash map while we talk. So I have a laptop running, which frustrates me because the other day I was had my headphones in, was typing a whole bunch of noise, listening to Joe Rogan and Ron White, and those guys drank a bottle of whiskey and smoked a bale of weed and didn't miss a lick. And I can't remember what happened Tuesday. So,
well, I think they've built up a tolerance.
I think so. So where we left off, we were talking about how we all made our first trips together in the Guadalupe Mountains, going to a crash on the Ligon Ranch. And what followed after that were a number of we'll call it legends and lore stories about lost airplanes and all kinds of stories, planes that had never been found, and
remains of pilots.
All kinds of stuff. Yeah. And we haven't made any of that happen, but what it's led to is we've visited, between the three of us and me personally, every known wreck in the park except one, and I actually found a new one, which is going to be another episode. But there's one that I have yet to find or have any good info on, and that is the first one recorded in 1932, the American Airways. Because if you guys remember, the Peak Monument, Guadalupe Peak Monument, is dedicated
to that airline.
Yeah.
I don't remember having read where it crashed. For some reason, I was under the impression that it crashed up on top, near where that monument is.
See, I have no idea. What happened, I got in tight with, Craig Fuller of aviationarchaeology.com. He's does an amazing job of collecting and disseminating records and information on all these old crashes. He ran across some pictures of that, and they were for sale on eBay. I'm not going to show them because they have somebody else's watermark on them, and I don't know who they belong to. I don't know who they sold to or what. But there are actually some photographs that are of absolutely no use to pinpointing exactly where they are. And evidently back then, one person wrote an article that went all the way around the world, and there's no new information on it. But I'll pull it up. I don't even know what kind of aircraft it is. It doesn't say. You can't tell from the wreckage. It crashed and burned. And of course, I've lost most of the stuff that I saved earlier. Yeah, 1932, and killed. I'm gonna have to pull it up. Bring it in closer here in a second. Killed. Okay, I now remember it. Killed 3. One passenger walked away, hiked out, and got help. And then everybody came in. They brought in people to help. There's a picture of a bunch of guys in suits standing around a stretcher.
Well, now
somewhere in the middle of nowhere.
That surprises me that there were 3 people on it because it was an airmail plane.
No, it was American Airways. It was a passenger plane of some description.
I think the monument on the peak is an airmail monument.
Is it?
But
okay, I could have this.
I think we're getting confused between Airways and airmail.
We probably are.
Because we're old and our brains don't work that good.
Yeah, and I can't find it.
Except Bill's still brain is like a steel trap.
Yeah, rusted steel trap.
Well, there were 4 people on board. There were for sure 4 people on board. Three died. Of course, in the article that I have lost from walking from my computer in the office to here, said that 3 of them burned to death, which whether they burned to death or died on impact, I don't know how they knew, but the one guy hiked out. That led to another article I found said that led to the construction of the Salt Flat Intermediate Airfield to provide a navigational beacon south of the mountain range. And what goes on there, and as we talk about individual crashes, if you fly between Dallas, Texas, and El Paso, Texas, there's a mountain range that jumps up to meet you, and that's the Guadalupe Mountains.
Right.
And it comes right up. It comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just one minute it's flat land, and the next minute it's 3,000 feet higher than it was.
A side note to that Salt Flat VOR, is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was intermediate
Okay.
airfield, and then it was replaced with just a VOR on site.
Dan Secker had been lobbying FAA to change the name of that because he said people look at that and it says Salt Flat, so they think Salt Flats. It's going to be flat for miles and miles and miles around, but yet you have Guadalupe Peak right square on the
right
straight line from and right next to it.
Yeah.
So, and to my knowledge, he never got anything done. Of course, he was killed in a plane crash. And I don't know how actively he was campaigning for this, but he had told me that he was trying to get it changed to some other name.
Well, yeah, and that's crazy. The one we found, we were looking for in the mountains originally, the Lost on the Navy plane. And that guy lucked out to have his problems where he did because he was over the Salt Flat rather than the mountain range, which is right next to it. I mean, they're just neighbors. 1932, 3 in plane burned to death in hillside crash. You can find this on gendisasters.com. Tightening his safety belt saved George A. Davidson's life while his 3 companions on an airplane trip were burned to death when the ship struck the side of a mountain. Pilot W.J. Bryant Robbins of American Airways, his co-pilot Francis Briggs, and Victor Ellman of St. Louis. A passenger, as was Davison, were killed. The plane wrecked yesterday morning was found early today by 2 other American Airways pilots, Ira McConaughey and Victor Miller. Davison was burned. They found him about 2 miles from the plane. Right, he didn't find help. I had that wrong. He'd stopped to build a fire because he couldn't find his way in the darkness. About 75 miles off of El Paso.
Where was he going to walk to?
Yeah,
anyway, I
yeah,
mean,
there was nothing there.
There's you can walk any direction and you're not going to get anywhere for 50 miles. Almost.
He was lost in the fog,
yeah.
And that was it. And one thing we noticed when we started looking for these lost airplanes, the Phantom planes, is you would get a hold of somebody that would know all about it, and then you realize everybody's talking about the same crash, like the B-17 or the B-24.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of them in the middle that got forgotten. So I guess the next one was the B-17, and the B-17 crashed. That was the one that was flying from the factory. I think it was a ferry flight. They just built the thing, and we're flying it. And what happens, there's a highway that leads right up to Pine Springs, and pilots will get in trouble, and they'll fly that highway, and the highway takes a bend and leads them right into that canyon.
So they're flying IFR, I follow roads.
Yeah.
Well, now I'm not sure when they might have put the Norden bomb sight on it, but Reese told me that they bulldozed that under. They came in and took the Norden bomb sight off of it.
Yeah,
before they bulldozed it, because that was super top secret during World War II.
Yeah, I did walk in here without that info, and I'm not going to stop recording. But yeah, that one was in, I believe it was 43. It occurred in 43, or 40. Let me pull it up. I got that much. Okay, I finally found it.
See, there would be an assistant producer getting their ass chewed out right now if this was a real program.
Yeah, that's true.
Not some fly-by-night, flash in the pan, seat of your pants bullshit.
Aircraft was. This is the B-17. It was the G model. Left. 17G. It crashed on December 23rd, 1943 at 10:40 a.m. Serial number is 42, starts with 42, so it was just built. Left the Boeing factory in Seattle December 6th of 43. Was on its way to Denver. It says.
It's a little ways out of his direct.
Yeah,
he got lost.
Denver Modification Center. It arrived at Roswell. I guess it stopped. I have no idea where it was going. Anyway, Roswell, December 16th, and the crash was 7 days later. So there's not a whole lot of info on that. Total time on engines and airframes was 69 hours. 5 out of 6 men were killed, 3 instructors, all captains, and 2 student officers, all were fatalities. 1 enlisted man. Oh, no, it was the engineer. Radio operator survived. All 5 officers were pilots. Originally took off from Roswell and returned for refueling. I guess they were training, and swapped some crew and crashed. Took off again at 9:57, crashed 43 minutes later in Pine Springs. Witnesses saw it flying about 200 feet above the highway, so I'd put it right about where he is. And
right about where Pine Springs is.
Yep, I saw it turn into the clouds, and there was a mountain there. I waited for it to crash, which it did. Said Mr. Glover. I've seen that name Glover before, and yeah, they were, wow. So yeah, there's tales of machine guns and bomb sites and all that stuff in there, but they did bury it. Apparently, it's visible from the road, and they got up there and covered it up. And then there's the B-24 that's up closer to Bush Mountain.
Yep.
We've been to that one.
Yep.
How much fun was that?
I'd heard 100 different people tell me, well, it's right there by the trail. And we got up there, and in my experience, it was not right there by the trail. And it was some damn hard hiking through some rough country to get from the trail to the crash. Now, maybe there was some more crash that was closer to the trail that we didn't see. I don't know. But the part that we went to, it was a real bitch getting there.
Yeah, that was tough. That one crashed December of 43, and they think it was icing. And there's a plaque, which we never found. We never found the part with the plaque on it.
Right. So I don't know. We didn't see the whole crash.
We didn't.
I don't know where the rest of it was.
And what's amazing about all these crashes is we've been to all of them that we know of except the first one, and aluminum doesn't rust away like an iron boat does. And some of them can look pretty fresh, and that thing could have crashed yesterday, except for we did see rust on the iron parts.
Well, except for the trees growing through the holes in the aluminum.
That was pretty
sort
cool,
of stuff.
some of that, yeah. But all of it was there. And, in fact, about 2 months after you and I went up there with Austin, it was in 2013, I think it was, with your son, there was a group that went after us, and they posted a picture of the plaque. So I have no idea where that part of it is, but it's
I
up
don't know.
there.
It must be closer to the trail, I would think.
It might have been. That was a mess. And that was found by a trapper. I think they sat up there for 2 weeks. Everybody was killed instantly. But I cannot imagine working a wreck in those mountains. But the one we went to, the one we trained for with the Civil Air Patrol was, what year was that one, Bill?
Which time?
The one in the
when
Kincaid.
was the crash up there on?
64, I think it was. Mike Murphy was on the team that went up there.
Raider Ridge, there it is. Yeah, date of wreck was August 29th, 1969, Cessna 182. And it was found in September. Yeah, it was found the following September, and it was going from Abilene. The people were from Florida. Yeah, oh, man, that's a grisly, yeah.
Say when it
They were
crashed?
packed out.
When did it crash?
It crashed on September 10th. No, I'm sorry. It crashed on August 29th of 1969. It was found on September 10th of 1969, 12 days later.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's...
Two fatalities, Mr. and Mrs. Earl Walker, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Noel Kincaid was part of the team that packed the bodies out. And it came from Abilene, was en route to El Paso. Bad weather, clouds obscured, and hit the mountain. And that's the thing about those. We were talking about this in the last episode. Is these old airplanes move? They slide down canyons, and the especially the ones in the open areas, the wind blows them around, and they fall further and further down. They're just not in the same place.
Well, if you remember, when Clif and I met with the park ranger, took us over onto Kincaid's place, went up on a little hill, pulled his spotting scope out, and I don't remember the year, Cliff. We were all in Civil Air Patrol at that time, and he pointed it out to us. He said, "See that little red spot there? That's the tail sticking up."
Yeah,
And then a couple of years later, we went again, and it was gone.
Well,
so it had stuck up there in the air from 69 till somewhere around 90, and they'd had a windstorm up there.
yeah,
It finally toppled it.
we saw something from it through a scope from Soldier Spring, like caught a glint at just the right time. At least we thought
Yeah,
we
you
did.
could just barely make out just a little dot.
In fact, on the B-24, if you go back in the Google Earth images,
Yeah.
you'll see a glint. You'll see a shine right through the trees of
like the-
where that one was.
Sun was just hitting it just right or something.
Yeah.
And a case there that verifies what you said. The first trip up, we found the tail gear. The tail wheel
Yeah.
way down the canyon. And we hiked for another 30 minutes
remember that. I was
before
there
we
for that,
actually
yeah.
got to the crash site.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm showing a photo now. Really interesting thing I want to get to is the Air Force crash map, because there was a time we were in Civil Air Patrol that they maintained a map. The Air Force Rescue Command, Coordination Command,
Yeah, coordination center.
RCC.
Center. Yeah, they maintained a map that if a plane crashed, it had a little description, and the best we can make out, it was probably a physical needle and a pin and a map in somebody's office somewhere.
Yeah, it's probably a sectional.
Yeah, and the idea was, if a plane crashed in a place like this, they're not going to haul it out. You're lucky they haul the bodies out because it's just miserable getting to and from. And there's a lot of data on it, and they would go in and paint these aircraft. In fact, I have a picture of they would paint an X on it so you could see from the air that it has been found. And the whole point of this was to confirm that the airplanes were found, that it was a known crash, because like we
So
said,
you're not just finding the same things over and over again.
yeah, like we said, you can fly over one or walk up to it, and it looks like it crashed yesterday, and it was 40 years ago. Well, somehow they publish that data online. It's public. You can do like Google Texas crash map, and you can find it, and it's segregated by state. And somehow they managed to lop a couple of digits off of the coordinates, so that data is lost forever. There's just not you can't pinpoint them. I mean, it'll say like the one we found. It said aircraft in gully, and that was it. That's all the information. And in an area that was probably 10 statute miles off, just because they chopped off part of the coordinates.
Well, if you're right, which you probably are right, because when this was all, when they started doing this, they didn't have computers and things like that.
No GPS.
No GPS. So what they had is like you said, they probably had a giant aeronautical sectional map on the wall, and they would find a crash, and some guy'd poke a pin in it. And so after 20 years, and you got a few hundred or a few thousand pins in this map, and somebody gets this bright idea, they're going to go, you know what? We need to write this down, right? So you get some kid, and you go, dude, here's what you need to do. You need to, on every one of these pins in this map, you need to write down the coordinates for it off of the map.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So right there, you don't have any kind of accuracy at all. You're talking plus or minus a mile at best.
See, that's verified by a conversation I had with Mike Murphy regarding that other plane that's up on the 30-degree parallel.
Yeah,
Texas, New Mexico border.
Yeah.
Right. I asked Mike, at that time, when this map was probably put together, how accurate flying could they identify the coordinates? He said plus or minus a mile radius.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Well, so that's a big, and that is some ugly territory. A mile up there.
Oh yeah.
And when you consider that's just the radius.
Yeah.
That is a big chunk of territory to be looking through.
Well, some of the military reports, and these are old typewritten. You can Google them up. They're typewritten reports with hand-drawn notes and sometimes handwritten statements.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll have degree, minute, second, lat longs on it that they've done off of a map, and they're typically accurate. I've laid them right over within a few feet of each other. And starting in the 90s, you'll find some FAA reports that'll have GPS coordinates, and then they stopped publishing it. They stopped publishing the coordinates. I think there was probably a directive, hey, don't put this in the report anymore because people like us.
Too many geocachers going up there.
Yeah. And here's something else strange. There is, I'm showing a picture now. This is a crash near Pine Springs that Bill and I were talking about, and not Pine Springs.
Careful, Bill.
Smith Springs. You can set my microphone on
you
fire.
You almost set your hat on fire.
So
can't do that either.
Bill took me to this crash off the trail, and Bill just said, "Hey, I think it's over here." And we walked over the ridge, and there it was. And that's
it.
That picture's from, and I'll put it up. It's a picture that I took. That airplane crashed, a long time ago. I'm going to have to go back to another screen, but is in the 60s. And that one has blown down considerably. It was way up higher, and it had tumbled. And I found an inscription in it, and it's got a person's name that you can read, so I'm not going to put it up. But the Boy Scout troop had scratched their names on it in 1970. And one thing I want you to notice about that picture is it looks like the tail number was cut out of it. Like sometimes they're really small, like 2 or 3 inch numbers. I think the number was cut out of it. I have no idea why.
Souvenir.
But yeah. I guess somebody you can cut it with a pocket knife, so that's probably more.
Now,
most
was
reasonable.
that a fabric plane? That wasn't fabric, was it?
No.
Okay.
I'll have to go back and I've already had to pause to keep looking up my reports. I can tell you exactly when that one crashed. I have put all of our work into a file where with all of our data that we've saved over the years. That was 1964, Smith Canyon wreck. And it's scattered out. And somebody had gone in a few years ago and shown positions for all of the parts of the aircraft, and they've moved a little bit. But I forget where I was going with this. Anyway, the one I'm going to show another one that we just pulled up. This one is if you hike the El Capitan Trail to where you can see you're kind of at the base of the face of Capitan facing south, there is a part of an airplane you can see very clearly. It's the tail, and you can see it from the trail. It'll catch your eye. It's red. It's got a lot of red on it, and it looks to me like the plane was originally red and there's red paint on it. That has blown down. That plane hit the face of El Capitan. But in 2015, there was a fire up there. And I don't know if you guys saw this, but it came out that a plane crash had sparked this fire. And it came out on some of the aviation notice, I forget the names of them, but there's a plane crash in certain areas. You go in and you tell them, I want to know about incidents here and there. And so it started to lighten up on all these sources I've got. And then a few months later, they go, nope, it had been there a long time ago. They said there was a tail section of an airplane in the middle of this fire, and that was it. And I believe that one's 60s or 70s as well. And, you look at that, and, man, a few yards away, just hiking, especially if you're trying to figure out what happened, that looks like it could have happened yesterday.
Yeah.
So, but that's... it's sad that the crash map data is just sort of gone forever, I think.
I had a hard copy of that one time. I have lost it somewhere. I don't know why, where, what, but it had a lot of crashes on it that we haven't been to yet that would have been of interest. Some of them were up in that area.
There are two... I have two crashes on my map, actually three, all in that same time period, all in places where airplanes normally don't crash, and they're probably in the mountains somewhere, and that all came from the crash map. So there's probably at least three more in there. And there was one found in 2013. I started working with a guy. We were exchanging emails. He was former park employee, and we were exchanging info on what we knew about crashes, and I identified a couple. He was missing coordinates on a couple of them, and I gave him a few, so he was excited, and we started swapping info back and forth.
Yeah.
And there's still the ones that are loose. Yes, sir. I'll do another one. The ones that we have not found yet are mine are on the top shelf in the back there, Clif. Those aren't on their crash map. They're not on mine. They're just on the Air Force's, and the data's lost. So we have no idea. Yeah. There's a couple. If anybody wants to have a look, really interesting to look up is a B-29, and her number is 44-69943. And that one crashed in the 40s as well. It is visible to this day on Google Earth. And it's on a private ranch, so don't go to this one. June of 45. And there are a lot of pictures of that one, and you can actually see that one moving around. You can see how she's blown around and sort of drifted into a canyon. And also, there was a collision of a couple of bomber trainers. I don't have all the data on that yet, and there's a wing sticking out of the ground. It's just north of the park, just barely north of the salt flats. And there's a newspaper article that I lost. I can't find it on the internet, and I'm sure it's still out there. It's just the newspaper has changed. It's something about the way they've shared the domain.
Do you remember the name of the newspaper?
I don't, Bill. But I'll eventually find it. But a relative of one of the pilots goes out there and lays flowers on it every so often.
Awesome. And
I found the lost Navy plane. I found a couple of miles south of there, but it's just outside of the park, like by a quarter mile outside of that park. So I couldn't go in there and look for it. But that's one of them. You can see, those are the only ones I'm aware of just off the top of my head you can see from the park, or from Google Earth, but they're out there.
Cliff, going off of that crash map that I had, it's not actually a map, it's just a list. You and I looked for another plane one time. You remember that road that we drove down, 4-wheel drive, up on the top, way down there, and then it turns sort of south and parallels McKittrick Canyon way up on the top. Then it comes to a dead end, and then there's a hiking trail that goes all the way over to that research campsite up above the canyon. We walked up
talking
in
about
there.
on the east side of McKittrick Canyon?
I think it's
Up there
actually
on
on the
that-
north. It may be east. I don't have the map
on
to
that
look.
geology trail
Right,
thing?
right. As we were going through that, before you get into the park, if you remember hiking that trail, you suddenly come to
when you're up there in Lincoln National Forest.
right. You're in the
Right.
forest. You're coming along there down that trail, and you come to that funny gate that you can have to walk through.
Yeah.
That's the park boundary.
Right.
Okay, but back up there a little ways, we went off
Yeah.
to the north looking for a plane
Yeah.
that was on that map.
We
Never found it.
Yeah.
Didn't come close. Now, this is not the same one as it's on 32-degree parallel.
Right. I don't know.
I don't.
There's
I mean,
so
I
many
remember.
of them.
Yeah.
I remember going up there and messing around, getting lost and finding ourselves.
So,
but I don't remember. I mean, obviously we didn't find the airplane. I would have probably remembered that, but but I just don't remember a whole lot of details about the trip at this point,
Okay.
other than just going up there and goofing
There's
off
just
mostly.
been several
Yeah.
trips. They all kind of meld together.
Exactly.
most of them.
Well, and when you don't find anything noteworthy, it's hard to remember.
Right.
Yeah.
You're
Because
right.
there's really
Absolutely
nothing
right.
to remember.
Yes. Yes.
We most of the crashes that we've dealt with involve fatalities, and there's very few up there that don't, just by the nature of the crash. When you look at all the crash, like when you're weeding out crashes near an airport, there are hundreds of incidents where somebody skids off a runway or damages a tail dragger in a ground loop. There's all kinds of stuff. There was one in 1974, and it was a father and a son. I think the kid was like something around 8 years old. And I got a picture. I don't know if I'd ever showed you guys that. And I can put this one up. It was a newspaper photo. This one is that airplane is near the one on El Capitan, but they both survived. It was luck. Same thing. Bad weather, lost, yada yada yada. And as soon as that guy saw trees, he pulled up, stalled the airplane, and just kissed the side of the mountain. And you can tell that airplane is in very good shape.
Just pancaked it in.
Yeah. He just sort of did the delicate butterfly landing, and they both walked away. I think he grabbed his son, like shielded him somehow, but they both walked away from that. And the Navy plane that we found, the pilot walked away. So there's a few every once in a while somebody makes it
But
out
that
of
was
there.
some very, very flat territory that one went into. Wasn't
He
it?
he was lucky. Yeah. Had that guy been
He didn't hit the side of a mountain.
Yeah. That's gonna take a whole entire episode, but because it's just fascinating how the facts came together on that one. But had that guy's, it was a failure that caused it. Had that guy failed, like 30 seconds later, he'd been next to that B-24. But one thing I want to say, I made a note to say this before, but remember, folks, if you come across things like this, if you visit one of these sites, not only these are it's essentially somebody's grave. It's a memorial, and it's where something terrible happened. And in some cases, it's a federally protected asset. And in fact, once we found the Navy plane, we turned in all of our information to the Park Service, and they become a park resource. So everything is actually owned by the federal government, because they don't want people hauling stuff out. And I'm sure it happens, but just you be respectful of it. In some cases, there's rules about going off trail, and typically the park, if you ask them, they'll let you go, and they'll tell you where stuff is and all that. I still want to find the American Airlines plane. And I asked 2 or 3 people. I've been in contact with the former superintendent, current superintendent, and a ranger who keeps up with it, former ranger who keeps up with this stuff, and nobody knows where that 1932 crash is. So that would be a cool one to find.
Yeah.
I don't even know what kind of airplane it is. I haven't found anything on it. But there are a bunch of them out there. In fact, like I said, there are at least 10 within what is now the park.
Have you thought about contacting American Airlines?
I have not.
It's quite possible that they have an archive of all of their planes that have been lost.
That's a good idea. I might do that. But there are quite a few, and that part of the problem out there, they keep turning up airplanes, and part of that problem is, what was the year that park was? It was in the 70s that became a park. Am I right?
I was thinking 68 or 78.
And then they added parts around it, like the Pine Springs and Guadalupe Peak and all that was a park. And then they took in Slaughter Canyon, and then they took in Carlsbad, and then they took in, I don't know. But the point is, as these developed, they kept finding stuff on them. And when I was talking, we've heard of airplanes in Slaughter Canyon, Dark Canyon, all over. And I was in contact with a guy. They found a botanist found a BT-13 like 4 years ago. They found chunks of a bomber, and there was Carlsbad Army Airfield is the closest one. And we've talked about this before. We talked about the Marfa Lights, just south of there. There's Marfa. Marfa had an airport. Midland had one. Hell, we had two. Paiute and all that, and they just flew training missions between them, so the sky was just alive with trainers and all that. And they unfortunately wrecked a lot of them in the Guads, and they're still turning. They're still turning up. They're just everywhere out there.
Well, there are more people hiking these areas now, but looking back at history, it's like the time when Clif and I went up and met with the park rangers. We wanted to go up there into, is it Dog Canyon Cliff that they closed? Theoretically now it's permanently closed to visitors.
Well, it's a sub canyon kind of off of North McKittrick Canyon. I don't remember the name of it. It's not Dog Canyon, but
we were going to look in there,
Yeah.
and that ranger said they had overflown it most of the time. They were doing a survey, and he said most of the time I could have stepped out of the helicopter and onto the ground. We were that close. I doubt that. But he said this country has had sheep herders and goat herders in it for years. It's not likely that there's anything up there that's never been found. But I also would think that, okay, here's a sheep herder, goat herder. Okay, he knows about this crash. Big deal. It's been there since he came around.
Yeah.
He doesn't talk to anybody about it. But so much of that country, I just can't believe that even a goat would be there, much less a goat herder.
If I'm not going to go through the whole thing. It's a very long article, but one of the known crash sites, you can look up the tail number, November 2816 Mike. You can also Google the name Frank A. Kendall. That's the one up by Queen, New Mexico.
Okay.
And it says he was that he, as a boy, herded sheep in New Mexico. Moved to Carlsbad, was on the City Council, Chamber of Commerce. He was in the Civil Air Patrol. Retired as an oil products distributor in '63, and he flew. They describe it as goodwill kind of stuff, and he died at 71 in a Piper PA-12 Cub, flying a Presbyterian minister nearby in the city of Queens. I can't remember the whole story. But there's a monument to him
I've seen
up there.
that. It's right there by that, close to that store.
Yeah, going toward Dog Canyon from Queens.
Right.
So that's a really interesting story. I can't do it justice reading out of the corner of my eye like that, but that's one of the known ones, one of the more famous crashes up there.
Well, on the lines of finding these crashes, more and more of them, you remember when Steve Fawcett went missing, where, Nevada?
Oh, yeah.
They
I remember that.
They found, I believe it was 6 never before found plane
right.
crashes, just
Yep.
searching for him. Of course, that was an intense search. It wasn't your normal Joe Blow, Bill Martin, or Cliff Sykes that was lost in the plane crash. This was Steve Fawcett, multimillionaire, entrepreneur, industrialist, explorer, inventor, and they wanted to find him. So there were dozens, if not hundreds, of planes and people looking for him. And they find 5 or 6 planes that had never been found before.
Oh, yeah. All you have to do is, I mean, some of you are going to do this. You're going to look up this data, and you can find it on, I'm gonna go up to the Guads and camp out at Pine Springs and go see the B-29 or some of the others. I mean, the B-17, excuse me. And you're going to get up there and be amazed at how hard it is to find one of these things, even when you know there's an airplane within 100 feet of you. Sometimes it's hard to find. So that's how God, I want to go back to that B-24. That was just, I remember I was sitting there thinking about, it was you, me, and your son Austin, 2013, and we had a map, we had all the GPS coordinates. We had actually very accurately plotted where that glint was, and we had data from people that had gone there before, so it's not like we were out just bushwhacking looking for an airplane. We walked up, and we got to an area, and I said something about, do we go this way, do we go that way, what do you think? And Cliff said, I think it's impassable. And he was right. And the first time, I just remembered this, the first time I was solo, the first time I was on Bush Mountain, I was by myself. And it was hot. It was middle of summer. I was going really ultralight. My feet were killing me. I had boots that I shouldn't have been wearing, and they were just chewing the flesh off of my heels. And I got up there, and that's the time I learned the lesson that you break your boots in for what you're going to be doing with them. And I had worn them. I wore them around the office till they felt good, and I wore them on SWAT 2 or 3 times. And then I climbed a mountain in them, and that was stupid. But anyway,
hindsight's 20/20 vision.
I came down the mountain mostly in my flip flops just to let the sores kind of crust up a little bit. It was miserable, but I got in there, and I got to where you and Austin and I were, and I was getting ready to go down there, and I thought, man, if I get down here, I'm going to hurt myself. And I couldn't get down it with a pack, and I didn't want to leave my gear, and I didn't have enough line to get me to where I needed to go. And finally, like I said, we figured a way in.
Some of that is just unbelievably thick, that brush in there, and the trees, and it's on a real steep incline.
Yeah.
It was crazy. There's all kinds of fallen, timber that's laying across the ground this way and that way, and it was you're right there next to it. You're 25 feet from the crash, and you can't see it, and you can't figure out how to get to it.
Yeah, and then we closed out the last video talking about cat claw, and oh my God, that stuff.
Well,
if you run
that,
into that, I've destroyed boots and clothes in cat claw. But somebody asked me, why do you do this? And as a younger person, I explained that we all have air crew experience at some point, Civil Air Patrol. I've done a lot of flying, flown sailplanes, and it's sort of in memory of these pilots. You don't want to be forgotten. You want to remember the efforts it took to either save people or recover them, and especially the World War II stuff. That is such a special time in U.S. history. I have a special place in my heart for all that, and hearing my grandmother's stories, and she was a plane spotter until her cataracts got so bad she couldn't see out of binoculars anymore. But she was, and that has a lot to do with why I do it. But we've at least plotted a few World War II planes, if nothing else.
Well, I'm the same way. My father and 2 oldest brothers were all in the service during World War II. Of course, Dad was medical administrative, hospital administration. Number one brother was in the Army, and I think he saw some bad stuff in the Philippines. Number two brother was on the USS Enterprise at the Battle of Leyte Gulf. But
We have
so it's yeah, you're right. It's
yeah.
and as you get older, these things are more important to you. 20 years ago, I wouldn't have cared. I don't know what it is. I don't understand the mechanism, but I have just become more interested in World War II history.
It was interesting to me when I was in the Civil Air Patrol because we so very rarely found airplanes.
Yeah.
We got called off, or it were false alarms. Somebody else found them. The airplane found it before the ground team. Ground team found it before the air team. Whatever it was. And so it became interesting to find it. But then what set in when we started in the information age, when we started looking for these lost planes, that just hooked me. And what hooked me about it was I like to plan, plot, and organize things and then go do it. And we dig up these old reports and put all this information together and scratch up aerials from the 30s, 40s, 50s, or whatever. And then you get that, and then you compare that with modern satellite data from Google Earth, and you crunch all this stuff together and go out there and find an airplane. That was an incredible. That was the peak of my whole career. So,
well, some people like to put together jigsaw puzzles, and some people like to find 70-year-old airplane crashes. I mean,
there you go.
It's just it's a challenge. You know, it's a puzzle. People like puzzles.
It's a puzzle. That's a really good way to put it.
Yeah, it is a puzzle.
Well, it's funny. I was in the process of this. I was running tail numbers, and I found email conversations between the three of us where we're trying to figure something out, and you'd see one of us respond at like 2 o'clock in the morning. Hey, I had this idea. What if it's here, or did you talk to this guy? And what started all this, I remember the moment this started, and it was at Murray's that led to the find of the actual lost airplane. We were sitting at Murray's. And for those of you who don't know, Bill's a cop, I'm a cop, and Clif is a crime analyst at a police department. I was a criminal investigator and still am. And we were sitting around going, hey, you know, on these crashes, there are people who know where they are. There are people who have seen them. If only we knew somebody who was perhaps good at asking questions and reviewing data and information.
I don't know, like an investigator.
What do you call him? Investigator. Hey, I got a great idea.
What do you call that guy? That guy that does that thing where he talks to people and gets information.
Right. So now you get to the part where you've got a cop showing up asking about a 70-year-old plane crash. And you go, okay, you got to be clear. I'm doing this because I'm nuts, not because there's anything crazy. Yeah. I want to talk to you about this hiking trip you went on in 1974, sir.
Hello, Sheriff. Yeah, I just got done talking to one of your insane investigators. I think you need to reel him in a little bit.
Yeah.
He may not need to be carrying a gun.
Yeah, so there's a lot to that. It's a lot of fun putting together sleuthing it and finding it. And you know, I had the extra rush of finding family members, the pilot from the last. I can't wait to talk about the Navy. We just don't have enough time. We're up against an hour anyway.
Have we got time for one more little story?
Lay it in, man. We're all about stories. I just poured a beer.
We've been doing this for an hour, but he spent half of that time monkeying around on his computer. So
yeah, there are going to be so many cuts in this because I just realized everything I organized in the laptop so I wouldn't sit here and and ah my way into nothingness.
And you still ummed and
And I still ummed and ah to the point we had to just, let's pause it.
Okay.
Anyway, go ahead, Bill.
I know I've told both of you this story, but in 2011 when I retired, I went to all of the buildings that I serviced and talked to the building manager, let him know I was retiring. And one lady asked me, well, what are you going to do now that you're retired? And
Bill retired as an elevator mechanic, vertical transportation technician.
That's
Is that
it.
right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just want to point that out because that's a really cool job.
Anyway, and this one lady just asked me, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I've got some buddies that we've been trying to find a plane crash over at the Guadalupes, and I talked for a couple of minutes about this. And she got this real strange look on her face. And after I finished, she said, My family lost a young man during World War II. He was a pilot, and he left El Paso flying east. And 15 minutes later was his last radio communication, and he has not been found since. Well, 15 minutes out of El Paso would have put him just about in the Guadalupes.
Yep. Right where the earth comes up and snatches them
Smacks
out of the
you
heavens.
in the face.
Yep.
That's right. So, you know, I don't know why she would have made that up. She gave me his name. I don't remember it. I've lost it somewhere. I talked to what is the agency? It's not J. That's they're located in Hawaii. That is in charge of all rescue recovery.
I don't know.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you that.
JPAC,
Yeah.
Joint. Anyway, I got hold of those people and told them that story, and they said they had no record or indication of a pilot lost in the Guads who had never been found.
Yeah. See, that's the problem. The thing we ran into, I don't want to call it a problem, but what happened, you had, I used to know the date when you had Civil Aeronautics Administration that became the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, and then the Army had their own people that did it. So depending on when it was, either or both could have shown up. And so you have like the Navy plane had both of them there, and then all the local agencies involved. But there were planes that crashed at the height of the war and the height of the air training era, and most of those seem to be between 42, 43. That those planes crashed. They got in trucks, went out and scraped everything up, left, and did a report. And you can order the reports. I mean, you can get them online. But it just happened, and that was it. And it may or may not be in a database somewhere, and you got to dig it out.
But if he was never heard of from, they don't know what happened to him, where would they look? And they didn't do searches then like we are accustomed to in Civil Air Patrol. When a plane goes down, we do everything we can or did to find it. And today, a military plane, they're going, look how much money they spent trying to find that E18 that left out of somewhere in Arizona, wasn't it? Finally crashed into a mountain in Colorado.
Yeah.
Now it was months.
Yep.
But they finally found him. Now they never found the bombs.
Huh.
He was carrying 4 500-pound bombs, if I remember right.
He must have popped them before.
And he dropped them somewhere, and of course they probably buried 50 feet deep in the ground.
Ugh.
But they spent a lot of money finding that man.
Well, a lot of these.
See, if he would have armed those bombs before he dropped them, where they would have exploded, they would have found him.
They would have found.
I'm just.
Yeah, one episode we're gonna have to tell some stories about that.
They would have found him.
Yeah. There's a couple of the reports on the collision. I remember the one on the collision and another one that I read up there. It's comparing reports, known and unknown crashes, that they would shut down the training and everybody would go search. And depending on, but ferry missions, amazing. A lot of the aircraft that we run into are ferry missions.
Right.
Because they grab guys that don't necessarily have a lot of time in that airplane. They just checked out, and they're all right, now fly it from California to Corpus Christi.
Yeah.
Well,
look at the number of whacks that were lost during World War II ferrying planes.
Yeah.
There were a lot of those ladies
brought
lost.
Here to Venture Field in Sweetwater. They have a little memorial to a bunch of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay, I didn't know that. But yeah, those ladies were awesome.
Cool.
And they flew everything there was to be flown.
Oh, yeah.
On ferry missions.
Yeah, their ferry stops. Midland was a big ferry stop. But guys, I think that pretty much wraps it for this episode. We're gonna have to pick up again on another because we're starting to run long.
All right.
Enjoyed the smoke. What are you burning tonight, Bill?
That is a Cohiba, red dot.
Oh yeah, the red dots.
But it's good.
This is a Punch Signature, and it is very nice. Cliff isn't smoking a cigar tonight. Well, we didn't offer you one, did we?
No.
All right.
If I'd have wanted one, I'd have brought one.
Right on. Well, your humidor's always open for you, buddy.
All
Cheers,
right.
guys.
Cheers.
Enjoyed it. We'll do it again. I don't.
Look forward to it already.